Formation shot, which obviously wasn't mine. It's a great shot. You go shoot it like you did. 6 rows back, there was no perception.
Bristol Type 142. The design was adapted into a new light bomber with a mid-wing and more powerful versions of that Bristol Mercury engine. And it was first delivered to the RAF at Witten with number 114 Squadron in March 1937. Replaced the Hawker Hind, and to give you an idea of the sort of advancement that this aeroplane represented, the Hind's top speed was 186 miles an hour, that of the Blenheim was 260. But its advantage over other contemporary types wasn't to last.
It's a testament to the extraordinary pace of development in aviation at that time, that when the Second World War broke out, only a couple of years after the Blenheim entered service, it was already being superseded by much faster aircraft on both sides. In RAF service when war broke out in September 1939, nearly 1,100 of them, than any other individual aircraft type. And this was the aircraft in which the RAF first went to war that pivotal month. Yes, at that point in time, the Mark I Blenheim equipped 2 home-based squadrons and 11 overseas squadrons, and further units were in the process of equipping with the more advanced Blenheim Mark IV. first British aircraft to fly over German territory after war was declared, on that occasion undertaking reconnaissance on German naval movements.
I never bother looking. Occasionally I have a random look. I don't delete it or do anything. It just uses the battery up. So I've got a second battery for this one now. I didn't know. I hadn't used it until yesterday.
The Lysander was an aircraft that was very promising and very advanced as a concept, although in some ways underperformed a little when the war actually broke out, and the outbreak of hostilities revealed the Lysander wasn't as well suited to the army cooperation role as had been hoped. It was a pretty vulnerable aircraft, regardless of which way you looked at it. Too slow to avoid fighters, too fast for artillery spotting, and too big to hide.
Oh, okay, so it doesn't need. So it might end up in that sort of problem. I think we did take off.
As the war went on, Lysanders were replaced by a multitude of other types. The P-40 Warhawk, the reconnaissance, the Taylor Oster, the army cooperation, for example. But the Lysander still had many impressive attributes, and in 1941, another very important role was found.
Have they got your pale skin?
Yes, this was support to the SOE, the Special Operations Executive, and this would guarantee the Lysander's everlasting legend. There were two squadrons of what were known as special duties Lysanders, numbers 138 and 161, stationed at Newmarket and very close to us here at Tempston. And between August 1941 and the end of 1944, they completed in excess of 400 operations in this configuration represented by the Shuttleworth Lysander, with a long-range fuel tank under the fuselage and an access ladder on the side. Dropping them off, often in fields that hopefully would heavily provide a strip in the middle of the road. Perhaps lit by torches put there by the French resistance if they were lucky, and then recovering them back to the UK.
Special duties Lysanders were not fitted with any kind of navigation equipment beyond what would normally have been fitted to a Lysander. The pilots just flew from a compass a map and the light of the moon, and these flights almost always occur around the time of a full moon, so that at least would provide a little ambient light. But sometimes in very poor weather
that one Lysander pilot once said, grounded pretty much the whole of the rest of the RAF. James Axby McCairns said that they went out to brave weather which was more deadly than the enemy. And of course they weren't to know what they'd find when they got to those landing sites. Had the site perhaps been betrayed to the Germans? Would they come under fire? No wonder these operations are remembered to this day, and at the former home of number 138 Squadron at Newmarket, a ceremony was held the other week at which this Lysander from the Shuttleworth collection was present to unveil a plaque and a memorial on the site of what's now Newmarket Racecourse, remembering its part in SOE operations by aircraft such as this, the Westland Lysander 3A.
and demonstrating there its very low stall speed, just 56 knots.
Mark Sharp in the Westland Lysander.